Let me open with my mantra, a very familiar and crowning scripture. It is found in Psalms 127 and verse number 1. And I paraphrase it often by saying, if the Lord don't keep the city won't be kept. But here's what it says. It says, unless the Lord builds the house, its builders labor in vain. Its builder labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchmen stand guard in vain. What I want you to take away from that today is that inside of us and all around us, there is a city. Inside of your body, there's a city, there's a walled place, there's a lot of different compartments, there's a lot of different streets, a lot of avenues, there's a lot of places to go. And in this process that we build and we labor and we watch over, we protect. And at the end of the day, if God don't have nothing to do with it, our protection, our labor is in vain. Uh, as I said before, we can take all the medication in the world. We can be under the best medical care, the best doctors, and in the best facility. And it's not going to matter if God is not in the process of maintaining your body, if God is not in the process of maintaining your finances, if God is not in the process of maintaining your children, maintaining your mind, the direction, your thoughts, everything about you, unless God keeps the city. And make no mistake about it, you are a city. It ain't just relegated to the city that's around you. It ain't talking about, going to Chicago or Los Angeles. It's not just talking about that. You are a city. And so when we think that we in the clear, we ain't got nothing to worry about because they get everything going on is happening in this scarcity in Chicago. Don't get it twisted, because inside of you is scarcity inside of your body, whether or not you know it, you realize it or not. And we have to come into a saving knowledge, into a reality that God is the keeper of our souls. God is the keeper of our mind. God is the keeper of our body. God keeps everything about you. And so again, I can't get away from it. If the Lord don't maintain, if He don't keep the city won't be kept. If He don't keep these United States of America, these United States of America will not be kept. I really don't care about border control, and I don't care so much about national security and how many bombs that we have, our technology in nuclear devices and all that stuff, or whatever it is that we got. It really don't matter, because if God ain't in it, and if He don't keep it, if He ain't been a part of it, it will not be kept. And as the writer says here in Psalms 127, it will all be in vain. It will all be in vain. I want to talk today a little bit about understanding the terrain. Now, this is not my title, but this is very germane to where we need to get to today, because I think a lot of us, even in my opening presentation and the way I preference my coming to you today, if the Lord don't keep the city, I think that a lot of that has a great deal to do with understanding the terrain. I think many of us have missed the terrain. The terrain is, do I know enough about what's going on around me? And do I know enough about what's going on inside of me? Do I know enough about what's being influenced over me and in me? Do I know enough about that? I need to know those things in order to make good decisions and critical decisions, in order for me to walk in knowledge and in wisdom. Knowledge and in wisdom. I need to understand that. When I was in the military, we used to do things called a reconnaissance. Um, I don't know, it's not maneuvers, but we would go out to the field, and we would be in remote areas. And in order for us to learn how to navigate in the event that there was a war, we would go on these reconnaissance missions. And when we would go up in high mountains, and it was full of trees, and in other words, it was an unfamiliar terrain. And so they would give us things like a compass and other things, survival. We was trying to, they was trying to get us to get survival skills. And some of us did pretty good in it, and others of us did not do so well. The point I'm trying to make here is that without the understanding of the terrain, you will fall into a ditch, and you may not fare so well. So we need to understand that. Now, in my backdrop on today, I want to deal with something here, and as you can see this, that I have uh, two circles, and the circles, they intersect with one another. Uh, they embrace they overlap one another. And the thing that I want you to focus on here is that in the middle, there's two circles, but then it ends up forming another type of circle. It's a type of circle. It's kind of oblong. It don't look the same. It's a bit awkward, the way that it fits inside there. It throws everything else off when you look at it. And in my picture on today, there's a question mark. And then that question mark, it presents a question. And in that, when you look at it from a scientific or mathematical perspective, there is a name that is given to that space in the middle, that is created out of two circles, two different circles. In this particular case, the one circle is the circle of a church, and then the other circle is a circle of the government. And when you look at them separately, the church is in one area and the government is in another area, but then there is a coming together. And when there's a coming together, it presents a question now that a lot of us, we don't understand the terrain. Hence, it puts us in limbo or a liminality. Liminality is a question mark. It suggests to us, what do I do now with this particular space? Because now I am intersecting with another environment that I'm not totally clear about, on one hand. And on the other hand, that is operating the same way. It's saying that I'm coming from a whole different perspective, and I'm interacting or intersecting with you, and I don't know what to do with it. Now, we can look at that from the standpoint of church and state, and I want to deal with that just a little bit. I don't want to get too deep into it, but it does not have to be limited to the church and state. It could also be what we would call heaven and earth, and where most of us, we get challenged at. It becomes extremely problematic. Is that when heaven and earth, when they intersect, we don't quite know what to do with that portion of our lives. What am I going to do with that? We're having that same problem even today, or that challenge when we look at the presidency. When we look at the election, you got, on one side we can see the circle of Democrats, on the other side we can see the circle of the Republicans. And however, they come together, they move in and out. And when they move in and out, it presents challenges and questions. And so it puts us in limbo, liminality of what do I do? How do I go forward? Because now I am challenged. On one hand, they have these views, and on the other hand, there's another set of views. And I am familiar with one set, but not the other. And so now I'm presented with both, and I'm in this space, this oblong space with a big question mark, and I don't quite know what to do with that. Now, the issue is, because I need to scurry along here, is that the reason why I'm bringing this to you is because there is an issue with the separation of church and state, separation of church and state. And let me just hit it real quick, because I think that is very germane to where we are and what we need to understand, where we need to get to. And that is that there is this Constitution, right? And in the Constitution, you know, people say that there's no place for religion, and I have a lot of friends and people that are around me, and they say there's no place for religion in the church. And so that's a matter of opinion. And by the time I get done with this, then I'll let you decide whether it's a place for religion or not. In the Constitution. And so the way that they addressed it, because it's not addressed in the Constitution, they addressed it with the First Amendment. And in the First Amendment, it says that the amendment states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Then it goes on to say, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Then it goes on to say, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for the redress of grievances, the redress of grievances. And so there's a lot of moving parts that is going on there. And the sum total of it is that it is not black and white. It is not binary. It's not on or off. It is very ambiguous, right? It can go either way. However, the main position that the Constitution or the First Amendment has taken is that we will not make it law. We will not address it from a law standpoint, church and state. And I can get into the reason why this came up, and it was some justices and all that based upon some school activity from a professor and a person that worked in the school and this, that, and the other. At the end of the day, what the justices did not want to do is they did not want the law to be an influence on the church, to be a deciding body or an influence to sway the church to go to the left or to the right. And the government can do that quite easily based upon what that particular religious entity may be in need for. And so they were really trying to bypass that. However, it does not remove itself or take itself from the table in the event that something comes up. So it is a reactionary type of thing that we are dealing with. And I know I'm gonna say it a lot here, but it's a reactionary place where we are, as well as it relates to church and state, and church being in state affairs and state affairs being inside of the church. We don't quite know what to do with this liminality, this place that has a question mark. How far can we take this? How far can we drive it? How far can we go? And so I said all that, and I know you guys are like conflicted at this point. You're saying, what is he actually talking about? And I want to get to it. So I want to talk today from the subject, whose hand is in it. I want to talk from the subject, whose hand is in it, and subtitle, the space in between, separation between church and state. Now, I may not be able to get to all that today, but I need that to be a drawing point for you, a focus point for you, if you will, because we are in the throes of making a decision, and I believe it's going to be an extreme decision. It's going to be very critical. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, that I am of the opinion and the persuasion that if, again, I'm not Democrat nor Republican, but I am conceding because of the energy, the drive, the direction, the momentum that is going towards the blue side, the Democrats. I am conceding with that. However, in my spirit now, this is the liminality. This is where you have to be equipped with enough to understand the terrain and to be able to navigate the things that are not presented, the things that are out there. You got to be fortified. You got to have a compass. You got to have the right tools. You got to be able to, you got to know how to survive. You got to know what plants you can eat and vegetation and all that kind of stuff. You got to know all that. Why? Because that's the part that's going to be left out. And without that information, you may make the wrong decision. And so I'm conceding because I believe that Kamala Harris has a very good chance to win the presidency. However, I don't think that Kamala Harris is the better choice. Now, I don't like Donald Trump and his the things that he stands for and he represents. And I don't like Kamala Harris, the things she stands for and she represents. But I see both as being evil, but I see a greater evil in many regards. And so I can't, with good conscience, vote for Kamala. I will not do that. And I can't, at this point, with good conscience, vote for Trump for a myriad of reasons as well. So we've got this question mark now, and I want us to understand and explore this question mark today before we go further. And I'm gonna try to be very quick uh, in my exposition here of the text. In Daniel chapter number 5, beginning at verse number 5, it says that in the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Verse 6, then the king's countenance was changed and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loosed and his knees smote one against another. And that is really a description of where we are today, because what is happening to America and to places around America, to other nations, is we don't know what to do. And it's causing us to collapse. Here we can see the king's body starting to collapse, but with us, we see the conditions of the mind. We don't know what to do. We don't have any answers. And so now this is bringing the needs of the mental state, the mentality, to tap together and to be very rickety, right? Now, watch this. He says that the joints of his loins were loosed and his knees smote one against another. The king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. And the king spake and said to the wise men of Babylon, whosoever shall read this writing and show me the interpretation thereof shall be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about his neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Now, the king now has a dilemma. The presidents of countries all around the world, they are dealing with dilemmas in situations, especially here in the United States. I guess I can really speak about them because this is where I live at. And so there's a lot of challenges now because there's some things that has taken place. Number one, America has been haughty. America has disobeyed God. America has practiced in this disobedience for quite some time. And if you go up and you read a little bit above that, Belteshazzar was, I think that was his name, not Belteshazzar. Belshazzar was the king now, and he was a son of Nebuchadnezzar. What Nebuchadnezzar did was he took the vessels out of the temple of the Lord. He took those vessels and he disrespected God. And so now his son here, which is Belshazzar, he has these vessels and he is basically going to make a mockery out of them. So he takes them, he has a party, and he has a party with all the wives, with all the princes and all the potentates and all this stuff, and they just doing their thing. And while they were having the party, there was a hand that got involved. Now there was a hand that got involved, and hence is the reason why I titled this "Whose Hand is in it?" Whose hand is in it? The hand now, and the writing from the hand, it disturbed Belshazzar. It disturbed him so much that he wanted the interpretation, and so he calls now. The only thing that he knows, because there is a separation of church and of state. In other words, the king represents the state part, and then there's another part, which would be Daniel, or the prophets, or the judges, people now that have been commissioned by God to have answers that the king does not think about. The king does not have privy to. The king does not want to embrace or to indulge that type of activity or rhetoric, because the king is the problem solver and he has all the answers in his hand. However, he goes to the soothsayers, he goes to the diviners, he goes to the astrologers, and all those that are of the world, all those that are of the dark side, that are of black magic and witchcraft and all that kind of stuff. And he says, can you please tell me what meaneth this writing? Now, I'm trying to get back to a place, because ultimately where we are is that there's got to be a place where the church has influence in the king's house. The church has to have influence in the king's house. This is the reason why I'm talking about the terrain and how to navigate. And you're not going to be able to navigate without God. This is another reason why I say, if God don't keep the city won't be kept, and the watchmen and the work and all that is going to be in vain. But conversely, even though the church and the state, or the church and the king, they have to shake hands. The other piece to it, the church has to be strong enough to do the will of God. They have to be positioned enough for God to recognize them in order to back them. And I think one of the issues that we have today is that the king or the presidents, those that are of the state, those that are of government, they're not approaching the church, because the church has not presented itself strong. It has not presented itself as if it has answers, and that it can be a solution to the problem. So the influence of the church is not there, which makes it very problematic. So it's not just that the government needs to touch bases with the church, and the issue between church and state is not that they should be separated. Is the issue surrounding it is the functionality of the church and the state. When you read in the book of First Samuel, chapter number 8, what was going on here was King Saul was trying to do what Samuel was supposed to do. Samuel was the acting priest. Samuel was the prophet. Samuel was the judge. In other words, Samuel was given the grace and the wherewithal to do what God wanted him to do, which represented the church or represented the spiritual side. God anointed King Saul for the government side. He was the king, so he was to handle the fights and all that stuff. Well, and we can see it throughout when the king gets involved in God's business. So when King Solomon got involved, that's when his kingdom came to ruins, when he started to sacrifice and to do what he felt needed to be done, but it wasn't his job. So this now can be very problematic as well. And I think that we have jumped into a situation where we become very dependent. The people now dependent on Trump, dependent on Harris, dependent on the Democrats, dependent on the Republicans to make all the difference in the world, to be the solution, the answers for whatever may come up. But again, Psalms 127, if God is not the builder of the city. In other words, if he does not have anything to do with it, it does not matter about how many bombs you got. It doesn't matter about how powerful you are. None of those things matter because God is absent from the process. Are y'all still with me? So this is the reason now where I have this little question mark that we can see in my backdrop that we need to have an answer for, and that most of us do not have. And so this is why the influence can come from the Swifties and the other side, to make America great again. The Swifties don't know; they don't have answers. They just influenced by some little crazy little girl. And to make America great again, the red hats, they don't know either, but they just saying make America great again for who and for what? I mean, what does greatness look like to God? It was great for some people that had advantages that other people did not have, but it wasn't so great for the others. So now we are absent of some places that we need to coming to a saving knowledge of. We need to be abreast about. Now, so here it is. We need to get to these answer pieces here, because if there's a writing that's on the wall, and my question to you today is, have you interpreted, do you understand the writing that's on the wall? Because the writing on the wall is coming in a different language. The writing on the wall is not clear. The writing on the wall is full of liminality. It's limbo, and you have to have discernment. You have to activate that spiritual side of you. There must be a relationship with you in order for you now to navigate, to walk through these terrain and make the right decision, the best decision. Again, they're both bad, but are we going to make the best decision for what is going to come to us, for what is going to come? And it's going to come. Now, so watch this. Chapter 5, Daniel chapter 5, verses 24, and I'm almost finished here. And this is where Daniel, because Belshazzar, he calls for his, all his tactics didn't work. The soothsayers, the diviners, the astrologers, and all the witchcraft didn't work. So now he's looking for the church. But here's what I want you to understand. When the church shows up in the person of Daniel, Daniel has an answer, and he's backed up by the Lord. The issue that we're having right now is can the government call on us and we have answers, and does the Lord have our back? Now watch this, verse number 24. Then was the part of the hand sent from him, and was and was right, and this writing was written. Now, this is Daniel now giving the interpretation. And this is the writing that was written. Mene, tekel, uh, upharsin. Mene, tekel, upharsin. Now, if I'm gonna see something like that on the wall, and if I'm not spiritual, if the Holy Ghost don't give me interpretation of it, I'm gonna look at it like that's some crazy stuff. And what most of the church is doing, or what most of the government is doing, not the church, the government, is they're looking at the church like it's got a whole bunch of crazy stuff that's going on right now. It's crazy writing on the wall. Why? Because there's not enough clarity, there's not enough interpretation, it's not presenting adequate solutions. And so it sounds like mene, tekel, upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Meaning, God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Okay, because understand they was already going in the wrong direction, but God, he wasn't telling the king, forthright, that this is what I'm getting ready to do. I'm getting ready to get into your backside. Okay, but it was going to come from the church, and I'm just trying to get us all to connect these dots here. Then it says, God have numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and are found wanting. Now I'm talking to America today, and I'm talking to the president. I'm talking to the president to be. I'm talking to governments. Okay, I'm talking to leadership. All that stuff is what we have allowed to lead and to guide us. It's the wrong thing unless God be in it. If he don't be in the nations, in the capital, and our laws and all this, it's a very mute point. Now, tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and are found wanting. 28, verse 28. Peres, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Now, then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet and put a chain of gold about his neck, etc., etc., etc. Now, so here now the point is that you're seeing strength come back to the forefront. It's being ushered. The church now is coming to life. And if we get nothing else out of this message, what I want you to know is that it don't have to be relegated to the church and the state. It could be your family, it could be your marriage, it could be husband and wife, it could be your finances, it could be poverty versus abundance. It could be whatever. It could be education versus a lack of education. Whatever it is, the issue is whose hand is governing it. Because even if it looks crazy, if God is in it, he takes the foolish things and confounds the wisdom of this world. He will take the foolishness and make those that think that they empower, think that they have all the money and all the influence and all the knowledge and all the wisdom, and he will bring them down. This was the meaning of the writing that from the hand that was on the wall. And so you don't have to look at it as church and state. You don't have to look at it as Republicans against Democrats. You can look at it from your own perspective, whatever that you have going on today. My question and what I want to leave with you today is, whose hand is in it? Who are you trusting in? Where are you putting all your eggs? Where have you pitched your tent to say, I understand this and that's going on, and we do have a government, and the government should be apart. We need to work together, but we have different functions in working together. All that stuff is all fine and good, but the common denominator, the question mark in between the two circles, the question mark between heaven and earth, between Democrats and Republicans, between Harris and Trump, is in that middle. That thing called a mandorla or liminal, where the question mark is. What do you know about that? How much of God? Because that's the answer. The answer is in the unknown. And the unknown up until this point is that we refuse to embrace God. We refuse to embrace the spiritual things of God. And all those question marks, we continue to push God away from our affairs, away from our families, away from our intellect, away from our marriages, away from our cities. We continue to push God away. And as long as you push God away, he's going to come at you. Now, he's raising up men and women of God in the church that are going to be fortified with the answers. And there's going to be people that's going to be positioned to say, "Hey, what meaneth this? I was going about my business and I saw this writing that was on the wall and I can't figure it out. Can you help me?" That strength and that power is coming back to the church, to America, and to the government. And there's going to be a blending of church and state. There is no such thing as separation of church and state. There is no such thing. There's just a separation of the functions between the church and the state. Get in your lane and stay in your lane. Let God be God and let the king be the king. At the end, the king reports to God, and the prophets and the servants of the Lord, they report to God. If you do it right and you manage it right and you honor him right, then God will honor us and he will make this next process in where we're going as an Americans, he will make it easier for us. He will make it easier for you. I want you to be blessed. I hope you got some out of that. I know I said a whole lot today. I want you to go in the Lord. I want you to go in his strength, his might, go in his speed, go in his love, go in his kindness. But most of all, I want you to go in God's grace. I am Dr. Donnie Eatman. I am the face of Face to Face. I want you to share this message with a neighbor, an enemy, and with a friend until we meet again the next time. I want you to know that I love you and there's nothing that you can do about it. Shalom. God bless.